Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me for the very last episode of Friday Book Bites for 2020. And I am thrilled to have not only a wonderful supporter of Australian writers, but a very good friend of mine join me, and that is Shelly Gardner. Hi Shelly, how are you today?
Hi Sandy. Well, it looks like we fixed our technical glitch.
Fingers crossed. Just to let everyone know, we're having a bit of an issue with technology at the moment. So if there's any kind of delay or Shell or I get frozen in an unflattering position, we do apologise for that in advance. But, you know, it's 2020 and the year just keeps on giving. For those of you who don't know, I live on the northern beaches. So if you've been watching the news, you will know what that means. So we're going to limp now towards the end of the year. I'm putting on my festive facade to try and get us there, and Shell's joined in with me as well. So the reason I've got Shell on here today is because she is known very affectionately amongst the Australian writing community as the Author Stalker, and I thought that would be a perfect way to finish the year off, talking about how best to stalk authors, and then we'll head into some Christmas chat as well. So Michelle, firstly, can I ask you, how did you get the nickname the Author Stalker?
Well, look, I've always loved writing, loved books, and loved going to author events, which unfortunately COVID has put pay to this year. But I used to always be heading out, and my friends just jokingly would say, "Oh, who are you off stalking now?" So it just became a bit of a nickname. "Oh, she's off author stalking." And then I was out at a writerly lunch about 18 months ago, and one of my friends said, "You should start a blog called The Author Stalker and interview authors." And at first I went, "Oh, yeah, no, not do that." And then the little seed was in there, and I thought, oh, why not? I mean, I admire you being able to do Facebook Live things. I was so nervous coming on. I can talk the leg off a chair, but the idea of doing it in front of other people. But it's a Q&A question thing. I email the authors, they email me back. I just do a little bit of writing, and it's lovely. It's just, everyone's been so supportive.
That is one of the beautiful things about the Australian writing community, is just how supportive that we are of each other. And you've had some pretty big names say yes to being stalked by you. Can you tell us who you've had on your blog?
Well, look, everyone I've approached has been so nice. I suppose one of my really big coups was Jane Harper last year, and I'm sure Jane won't mind sharing the story of how I originally approached her in the bathroom of the Four Seasons Hotel during one of her author events. And Sandy did say to me, "You didn't." And I said, "No, I was just chatting." And we sort of formed a bit of a connection, and then I live by motto, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I just sort of sent out messages to her and asked her if she'd be interested in being stalked, and she said, "Yeah, love to." And, you know, I've had Michael Rowbotham and Josephine Moon, Natasha Lester was this year's Christmas stalker, my huge author fan crush, Hannah Ritchell. There's just been so many, and it got to the point that I actually had a few authors approach me, which just blew me away that they even knew who I was on my little blog. So about, I think it was in March of this year, I actually changed it from a month to fortnight. But there's so much writing talent in Australia, I really could do one a week, but juggling it with my day job and family, once a fortnight's about all I can manage at the moment.
Now, you've covered everyone in an Australian writing community, from debuts to the Australian writing royalty like Jane Harper, as you've mentioned. What is something that writers, regardless of where they're at in their journey, seem to have in common, do you think?
I think one of my questions is, I ask them what their writing advice is, and I get, you know, that you just have to sit down and do it. You can't edit a blank page. You know, some are plotters, some are pantsers. Persistence seems to be the key to their success, and I'm just waiting for Sandy to smile. For those of you who don't know, I'm a blogger, I'm an aspiring author, and I'm a dreadful procrastinator who's, I think it's 5 years and counting on my debut manuscript. But it's that consistency that I'm yet to nail. And I think unless you do sit down and write regularly, it's just not going to happen. And that seems to be the biggest sort of thing that they say.
Has any of the advice that they've given throughout your blog journey surprised you at all?
It has, to a degree. Kerry Turner, who just writes the most beautiful historical fiction novels, she actually said that you need to learn to basically love your rejections, because I think every aspiring author cringes at the idea of a rejection. And she said, if you get a personalised rejection, it's a positive. If you get a note with a rejection, it's just like gold. Because she said it helps you to develop this tough skin you're going to need once you actually get a publishing deal. And I think also Christian White said, just click the damn send button, because no writing is ever perfect. Love Christian. And I think that's so true, because obviously while you have to polish it to a certain level, I think everyone holds back, oh, if I just do this and I just do that. So that sort of surprised me, because, you know, most people are fantastic words of wisdom about how to do it. They were two sort of ones that sort of stood out as being a little bit different. And also Catherine Milne and Michael Robotham also said, you need to really, it needs to be something you love to do. It needs to bring you joy before you even think about a publishing deal, because a publishing deal may never come. So you need to write because you love to write. So I sort of fall in that category. I write because I love to write. Where the publishing down the track happens, who knows? But I'm so inspired by all the authors I talk to, and I just think, oh, that would be so cool. And then I go and procrastinate again.
We have a comment here from Kay Hart, and Kay is someone who knows you very well, Michelle, and she's just written procrastinator. Nice, I won't make any further comment on that from Kay. Now, something I forgot to do at the beginning, which I normally do, is put up the details of the giveaway, because I always have a giveaway with my Friday Book Bites, and that was because we were just a bit thrown by the technical hitches that we were having at the beginning. And I don't have my beautiful graphic that I would normally have, but I'm thinking that seeing as this is our Christmas episode and it's our last episode, maybe the giveaway can be a bit of a surprise for people. Maybe a book, maybe some chocolate, I don't know. And that's, of course, assuming that I am allowed to go to the post office at any point in the next few days, being stuck here.
Shop for you.
There you go. Maybe that's the way we can get around the lockdown. It's not a proper lockdown yet. We're just being advised to stay at home. There's actually a question here from Kay, which I'll throw up before I get to my next question. And that is, what inspired you, Shell, for your passion of literature?
Good question. When I was a kid, I was one of those kids who was always outdoors playing, but if I wasn't outdoors playing, I was inside with my head jammed into a book. And there was a book by an American author called Catherine Woolley called Ginny and the Mystery Doll. And I just loved that book. It was the book, I say, that made me want to become a writer. I loved my Trixie Beldens and my Enid Blytons. And I think my dad very much was a big reader. He actually wanted to be a writer as well. He started his memoirs, but sadly never finished them. And I just grew up with a real sense of reverence around books. And my dad several years ago gave to my youngest daughter, Ella, a copy of Black Beauty that he won at school when he was 8. And it's just the most beautiful old book. It's still in really, really pristine condition. And Dad just always valued books. He grew up in wartime England, the eldest of 10, bit of an abusive background at times. And books to him were sacred. It was his escapism. It was also just something that was just beautiful and was his. And yeah, so I suppose I've just grown up with a dad who loved books, and it just rubbed off.
While we're speaking about your father, Shelly Gardner is actually your pseudonym. And where's that come from?
Well, Gardner was my maiden name. And when it came to writing, because I'm Michelle Parsons, but a lot of people call me Shell. My nana used to call me Shelley. I love Percy Bysshe Shelley, the poet. So when it was sort of coming out with the idea of having a writing name, it wasn't so much not wanting to write under Michelle Parsons, but I felt like it was a bit of a nod to my dad, because as I said, he did want to be a published author one day, and sadly passed away back in 2015 at the age of 89 without having reached that goal. And I always figure if I ever did get published, the name Gardner would be on the bookshelf, and it's sort of like we would both be up there then. And the Shelley flowed better than Shell, so it was Shelly Gardner rather than Shell Gardner.
I really love that nod to your father. That's such a sweet thing to do. And it shows, I think, that as writers, published or unpublished, there's always an emotional connection that we have to our work. And we have to have that emotional connection in order to do this job. Now, as we've said, you are a writer as well as a reader and a stalker. What's your stalking taught you about your own writing journey?
I suppose it's that you can sprinkle a bit of different genres in. I write contemporary women's fiction with historical flashbacks. I do love reading crime. I don't think I could actually ever write effective crime, but you can just talking to different authors, going to their author talks, read their books, and you'll understand this also, being a writer and a voracious reader, is when you're a writer, you don't read in the same way. You analyze sentences, you highlight. I mean, I love real books, but I also love my Kindle because I can actually highlight passages, which I would never dare to do in a real book because I just don't do that. And you really just learn to have a real love of language. So by stalking different people and reading different and pushing me out of my traditional genres that I did read, because I do like to have read someone's book if I'm going to stalk them. And yeah, it just sort of, I suppose, taught me different ways. I mean, I'm a real pantser, not a plotter. Jane Harper, I know, is a voracious plotter, and she says, look, it makes things so much easier. So I have tried starting to plot a bit, not terribly effectively. But yeah, I suppose that would be it. And just seeing writing, I mean, even watching your journey. Sandy and I both met at a writing course at Writing New South Wales back in 2016. So Sandy, when she had her manuscripts there, but was still seeking a publishing deal, and getting to watch firsthand what's involved with being a published author, the pressure of edits and deadlines, I have a whole new level of respect and a bit of fear.
There's actually a lovely comment from Jenny that ties in beautifully with what you've just said there, Shell, that she said it's interesting to learn how much effort goes into a book before it finds its way to her Kobo. And that's exactly what you were just talking about there. I think a lot of readers think that, you know, you sit down, you write, the book comes out, and then suddenly it's on the shelf. And it is not that at all. Has that been the thing that's shocked you the most about, you know, following all these writers and learning what the journey's like?
I think it is to a degree, because, you know, I knew obviously there was layers of edits and things like that, but I didn't realise how vastly different sometimes the original manuscript can be when it's finally published, how authors are told to throw away 20,000 words of a 100,000 word manuscript and rewrite it. And in something that you've invested, you know, maybe 6, 12 months or in most 5 years on, the idea of actually having to go back and really pull apart something you've put so many hours into already. But obviously the publishers know what they're doing, because when we read the finished product, it's the best incarnation of the writer's story that it can be, which is what we all ultimately want. But it's it's definitely opened my eyes, you know, having writer friends and stalking publisher Catherine Milne, and, you know, finding out, and they want what's best for the author as well. They want their book to sell. It's good for the publisher, it's good for the author, but they just want a really high quality product going out. And I just don't think people realise what that takes.
Yeah, not long before she passed away, I read a quote from Maeve Binchy, who obviously was a very successful author in a similar genre to mine. And she said something like, from her first draft to the book that ends up on the shelf, 80% of the original disappears.
Yeah, that's truly horrifying.
Now, I don't think I've ever got to the point where 80% of it has gone. But yeah, there's a lot of words that get thrown out. You know, a book that's 100,000 words, which is a fairly standard size book in my genre, you know, you've probably written at least 150,000 to get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got a question here from Chrissy. Do you choose to interview authors you like to read, or do you actively pursue those whose books are new releases?
Good question. Originally, I stalked authors whose books I loved, because it was like I just wanted to meet them and find out more about them and things. Not creepy stalker at all. And then, you know, I do like to try and like give a voice to debuts. I do appreciate, once again, seeing people firsthand how hard it is to crack into a market, and especially in the middle of a pandemic. You know, if you don't already have, you know, if you're one of the big names, you have a huge following, they're going to find your book either way. But if you're a debut, it can be very hard to get your book out there. And is this where I can give a little spruik to a book?
Whenever you want, yeah, go for it.
So Ray Cairns' book, The Good Mother's, just come out. And she's part of a little writing group on the Northern Beaches. So sending my love to all the Northern Beaches writers. And she's a part of a group called the Inkwells, which is made up, you know, with Pamela Cook and Joanna Nell, and oh goodness, I'm just going blank on names. Sandy, help me out there. But Penelope Janu.
Penelope Janu. Yep.
Yep. And so there's lots of beautiful writers there. And the hours that they put into this book, and then it comes out when it's very hard to do author events and go to library events and, you know, even bookshop signings. So if you can if I can help through my blog, bring a bit of attention to people, that's great. And yeah, it's just, yeah. So in answer to your question, Chrissy, I am trying to include some more debuts. I've got some good names lined up for early next year, and a few of those are debut authors. And yeah, it's just, you know, I'm open if a book resonates with me, I want to share it with people. Or sometimes I meet the author and I haven't actually read any of their work, and then I'll read it. And I don't know if I could actually interview someone whose book I didn't like, and that hasn't happened so far. So I probably just wouldn't actively reach out to them, because I know even if it's a book that doesn't meet my taste, it doesn't mean it's a bad book. It's just we all have different tastes of what we love. So if you see it on my post, you know I love it.
I think that's a really interesting thing, actually. And as an author, I really appreciate that that's the way you operate, that you simply won't review a book if you haven't enjoyed it. Because, as you said, it's just a matter of taste. You know, what you love, I might hate. What I, love, you might hate. And I think people don't understand how not only damaging to our very fragile souls it can be to get a negative review, but also it can put other people off buying the book who may actually have enjoyed it. So from all the authors, I thank you for taking that stand. Yeah, just don't put it out there. If you don't like it, that's fine, and not everybody is going to love every book, but yeah, just don't put it out there like that.
Well, I was always raised, as most of you were probably, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it. And as I say, I know how much blood, sweat and tears went into a book, and, you know, as you say, it's purely personal choice. You know, I mean, there's certain genres I read, and it's no criticism of that genre, I just don't read it. I was actually asked to read a manuscript for a friend. I went to Fiona McIntosh's writing masterclass in Adelaide a few years ago, which was fantastic. Made a beautiful group of writerly friends through that. And one of them was writing science fiction, and he'd asked me before masterclass, we connected online and said, would you be happy to read my manuscript? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I started reading it and realised it's a very specific genre that you sort of have to understand. And I'm reading it going, I don't actually understand what is being said. And it was no criticism of his writing. So I ended up having to get, at the time, I think it was my 15-year-old down who loves all that stuff. And she goes, well, you remember in the movie Iron Man how he had this, this and this? And I went, I haven't seen Iron Man. Oh, okay, well, there's this. And so once she actually translated it, I suppose it's a bit like reading a book in German if you don't speak German. Yep. She had to teach me the language of sci-fi. And then it was a great story. He had a beautiful character, and I could see all that. But, you know, it's that, once again, you know, if I'd picked that up in a shop, I probably wouldn't have bought it because it didn't make sense to me. But that's not a criticism. He nailed it. She loved it.
Yeah, Yeah. And we've got a comment from Claudine on the back of this, you know, absolutely well said. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. There's a couple of more comments that I'm going to flick through here that are coming through. Victoria is loving our hats. Thank you, Victoria. We are very proud of our Santa hats here. And Victoria is also heading into Editland for her debut. Pray for her. So you are in our prayers, Victoria. I certainly know where you're at. I just got my edit notes this week from my publisher, so I'm about to jump into that. Just know, though, Victoria, that this is the chance now where you polish those beautiful words and make it better. So it feels like hard work, but it will be worth it at the end. And Claudine's left a comment that she didn't know that about Maeve, and that was very interesting. And Yvonne, who's been one of my regulars on Friday Book Bites, thank you, Yvonne, for tuning in. I think you've been here every week, which is wonderful. She said it's always she's always interested in hearing about new authors, and that she has met so many this year online. And that's coming back to your comment about you know, taking on more debuts. Perhaps it's a wonderful way to find new authors, isn't it?
Well, it's been, I suppose, the upside, and let's be honest, COVID needs an upside, is getting to attend more author events than I physically probably could have done, you know, to finish work and then have to drive across the other side of Sydney. There's a most divine bookshop. I've got to give a shout out to darling Anna. Anna's bookshop in Cronulla, and Anna's shop around the corner. And Anna is such a great advocate for authors. And she has the most beautiful bookshop, and you can have lunch there and morning tea. But I live in Barara, which is north of Hornsby, and Anna's in Cronulla. So it's like an hour and a half each way. So while I would love to go to heaps of events there, the physical distance is a barrier. Whereas because she's been doing Facebook live streams, it's great. I've been getting to watch so many more, you know, of the talks. And, you know, it's really pushed authors into a different direction of having to rethink how they get their books out there. I mean, authors have always had to do a lot of self-promotion, I know, but I think it's just opened them up to overseas audiences who perhaps wouldn't have had a chance to hear them speak. It's been great.
Yeah, it has. It's been an interesting year, and you know, we had to make the most of what we were dealt, and that has been one really lovely thing about it. And me doing Friday Book Bites has been a fantastic opportunity for me to talk to authors and to introduce them to readers like Yvonne. It's been wonderful. We've got a comment here from Vanessa that says Anna is the best, and I will second and third and fourth and fifth that comment. And Emma, who says that she loves how you shall support authors, which is wonderful. And a comment from Bev that says she's found many new fabulous authors this year through Friday Book Bites, which is fantastic that it is getting out there. And I just want to just a little blow my own horn here. Leanne says that I look very good in my Christmas gear. Thank you, Leanne. There is a question here from Kay, and it's a great question. Have you managed to convert any non-readers into book lovers through your amazing work as the Author Stalker?
I love that. I don't know if it's through my blog. Hopefully I have. But I have a book club, and when I put feelers out a couple of years ago on Facebook and said, looking at starting a book club, anyone want to join? And a girl, I used to be a registered nurse many moons ago, and a girl I used to nurse with back in the 90s said, I'd love to join. She said, I'm not a reader though. And I'm thinking, okay, why are you wanting to join? And she said, I'm trying to inspire my teenage son to become a reader, which I thought was just beautiful. Really, really loved it. So good job, Katrina. So Katrina joined, and just watching her discover books, and like she'd message me, oh my God, this book's fantastic, I love it. And then she goes, I've bought, you know, their back catalogue or bits and pieces like that. And I just think it's lovely, because I think reading is something that, you know, you've got your bookworms. I mean, I was a library monitor. You know, you've got your people who've always loved books, and then you've got your people who discover books. And I just think it's in such a time poor world. Another upside of COVID, I think, is that we've had more time at home, that people are starting to get into books again. And I think if I can help one person discover a love of reading, that's just awesome. And my own daughters the younger one particularly, used to love reading all the Harry Potters and all that, but both of them reading had disappeared a bit from their lives. They just got busy with other interests and that. And my eldest loved reading, but she just, I'm trying to do things. She's a pastry chef and she had her own business and she was working part-time. And she said, I don't have time to sit and read. And she discovered Audible. And now she sort of said to me, what's the first book I should read? And it was The Dry by Jane Harper I recommended. And there's been several other ones like, that's Jane's latest one, which love. We'll come to that later. But there was a book that came out this year, Leah Swan's Shearwater, which is just breathtaking. It will literally take your breath away, fracture your heart. And I remember Bree saying, yep, I'm going to read it. And she was madly baking a wedding cake, listening away. And I walked into the kitchen and she turned around and she had tears rolling down her cheeks. And I went, darling, what's wrong? Thinking, oh my God, something's gone wrong with the wedding cake. And she goes, that ending on Shearwater. And I just love it because we can now, we're always very close and chat all the time, but to be able to actually now chat books with her, and as soon as she finishes something, she goes, oh, okay, now finish this, and we can have a bit of a natter. So I think that's lovely too.
We've got Leanne chiming in, and Leanne is a librarian. That Shearwater was amazing. Bev has said that she's found many new fabulous authors through Friday Book Bites. I'm very, very pleased to hear that. And Jo has said that her to-be-read pile is towering thanks to Friday Book Bites. For me, Jo, that's a sorry, not sorry moment. As long as you don't get crushed by the tower, then we're okay. I wanted to ask you, Shell, and it kind of comes on the back of Kay's question there, I guess. Because of your author stalking and that you've reached out and met so many other authors, over the course of the last couple of years, have you discovered a genre yourself that perhaps you didn't think you would enjoy, but you did end up liking, something that was new to you perhaps?
Yeah, as I said, I wasn't really a crime reader. I love watching crime shows on TV, but I just love, contemporary women's fiction and historical fiction that was just made me feel warm and fluffy, whereas I suppose crime didn't. And as I said, I suppose, I've interviewed Michael Rowbotham and met him. He's such a character and a remarkable storyteller, not just in his stories, when you actually see him live on stage. And Jane, who's just such a humble and generous person and very supportive of emerging writers as well, that it made me had stumbled across their books and made me want to read it. And I love crime now. I'm such a crime junkie, and I would never have thought I would have been. But it's funny, it works in reverse. You know this story, Sandy, but I'll share it with Friday Book Bites viewers. My mother-in-law is such a staunch crime reader and loves James Patterson. Anyway, she knew I was writing a book, and she sort of said, oh, so what's it about? So I gave her the little spiel, and she goes, oh, look, it sounds good. I just don't read that sort of book. And it's like, that's fine. Everyone reads something different. So when it came to gifting her books at Christmas, I would never include any of the books that I read except for the crime ones. Anyway, one day I thought, I'm going to be just a bit tricky. And I happened to pop in a copy of Sandy's The Cottage at Rosella Cove. And I said to her, look, might not be a cup of tea, just give it a go. Well, she has to now be Sandy's #1 fan, to the point that I got a call at work probably about 3 months ago. And my mum-in-law never rings me at work. So straight away, she's, older, thinking, oh my goodness, she's had a fall or something's happened. And I picked up the phone and I said, Nancy, are you okay? And she went, oh my God. The Banksia Bay check. Oh, I just loved it. She writes so beautifully. And I was relieved, and I was also like, you're ringing me to tell me this at work. And then it was like, so when's the next one out? Which harks back to what you were saying before. People don't realise all the time that goes into writing. So she was most upset to find she had to wait out till next year. But she's converted the other way. So probably a long-winded answer to the question, but sorry.
No, it's beautiful. I really love when readers' eyes are opened like that, regardless of whether it's from crime to women's fiction or women's fiction to crime or crime to fantasy or whichever way it goes, because that's how I became a reader. You know, I didn't read at all as a child, and anyone that's been to any of my author events will know that. And it was my dad that put a fantasy novel in my hands and said, just like you did with your mother-in-law, just give it a go, just try it. You know, you might not like it, but try it. And that changed my entire life, really. You know, so I think it's really lovely.
But it's also opened up a whole new level of book giving. I was just reading Vanessa's comment, that's so cute. Well, I'm glad you think so, because guess what my mother-in-law got for Christmas? Vanessa's beautiful new book. And she has read Vanessa's debut, which she absolutely loved as well. And she's got some May and Linnell. And she's got one coming in from the UK that's still in transit. And I can't think what else. I gave her 4 books, but it's just gone out of my head at the moment. But
yeah. I'm looking through the comments here. There's quite a few coming through. Tracy said that she discovered magical realism just in the last couple of years and found that she loved it. Leanne is saying that her favourite genre is thriller, but she needs a Sandy in between to remind herself of the lovely. Thanks, Leanne. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this or not, Leanne, but I'm going to, so sorry for publicly outing you. Leanne is actually the inspiration for my next novel, The Wattle Island Book Club. So we'll get to that next year, hopefully, when we can do some author events. I'll tell you all that story and the role that Leanne has played in that. There's a beautiful comment here from Caroline, and I feel a bit like I'm going to go red reading this, but she said that both myself and Rachel Johns gave Caroline back the love of books after many years of not reading. And that just shows the power of books, doesn't it?
It sure does. It brings people together, you know, whether it be a book club or just having a chat with a friend, or if you see someone out in public and they're reading a book, or in a bookshop. I don't know if you do it, but if I see someone hovering in a section, I go, that one's really good. That one's really good, sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of doing it with my own books as well. I was in Big W one day, and a lady actually picked up my book off the shelf, and I looked over her shoulder and I said, "Oh, yeah, that's pretty good." And she looked at me and I said, "I'm sorry, I'm the author." And she was like, "Oh my God, sign it." So I signed it. So she had to buy it then.
That's awesome.
I don't hang around bookshops waiting for it.
You do. You're a bookshop stalker, aren't you? I know.
No, never. I don't know what you're talking about.
Never. I was going to say too, you mentioned that Leanne is a librarian. Hats off to librarians. I work in a primary school library. I'm not a librarian. And the librarians we have working there are just gorgeous. We're lucky we just had a massive refurbishment of our whole school, and we have the most beautiful library space. It looks like an alpine chalet with the big floor-to-ceiling windows. Mm. And I remember when we opened the library the first day, and we had these giant cushions in front of this big window. And I remember walking out to reshelve some books, and here's this little fella, probably second or third class, lying back, head on the pillow, legs crossed, book up in the air, and just warms my heart. Or when the librarians call the kids to come actually do the lesson part after the reading, and there's always a handful who don't hear it because they're just lost within the pages of a book, and you can't get cross with them because, you know, that's us. But it's just beautiful. So hats off to librarians, shout out to them, hope they all have a good Christmas.
Exactly. Tracy Anderson has become an author stalker the last year. There you go. Maybe you two can swap some tips, perhaps.
We can start our own
club. The Author Stalking Club. I like it. And Caroline's made a comment that Leanne will be famous. She will by the time I'm finished with us. So. And Yvonne has said, please come to Ballina. Well, Yvonne, it actually was on the cards this year. I could have got up there because I was going up the north coast. Obviously, that got waylaid because of COVID. So fingers crossed for next year that we're allowed to tour properly, because Ballina is not too far from my hometown of Coffs Harbour. So that's definitely someplace I would love to go. Jo's left a comment that she was also introduced to magical realism through my Friday Book Bites to Tabitha Bird, which is fantastic. And Leanne is taking a different spin. I don't know whether you'll let her join the club, Michelle, or not. She is the librarian author stalker.
Oh, awesome.
And she has done 19 Zoom author chats, which I was very fortunate to be one of, and she had so much fun with that. So can she join your stalking club?
And then there were 3. We've got 3 already. You watch all the stalkers come out of the woodwork. There's a lot more of us out there. They're just a bit shy. I was joking with Sandy yesterday. We just did a little trial session, and I picked up a poinsettia and I had it in front of my face, and I said, maybe I could be incognito so people don't know who the Author Stalker is. But now I've got a clue.
Well, now we all know who you are, so you're not getting away with that. And yes, Michelle, your club has just kicked off. Caroline said we should all join the Author Stalker Club. So, excellent. Now, I'm going to try, and this is where we kind of had a bit of a technical hitch at the beginning. I'm going to try to put up the details of where you can find Shell out there in cyberspace, so you can read her beautiful blogs and interviews that she does with authors. So fingers crossed this doesn't go astray. Fingers crossed. Technology, please work. Oh, look, there you go. So this is where you can find Shell, her website, her Facebook, and her Instagram. And if you are looking for some recommendations on books to read, this is the place to go. Now we're going to wrap this up, but we are dressed in our Christmas attire, and it is 1 week today until Christmas. Do you have any ebooks on either your I want for Christmas list or I'm going to give for Christmas list, Shell?
Okay, well, I am one of those people that never feels bad about buying books because, I'm just supporting the publishing industry. So I have already bought most of the books I want myself for Christmas. That being said, I have bought a set. The Valley of Lost Stories by Vanessa McCausland was on my Christmas giving list this year. Beautiful, which I also pulled up at the same time. God, I'm doing this technical stuff. Hang on. Hannah Ritchell's The Shadow Year. Now, Hannah's an English author, but she lived in Sydney for a long period of time, so she's actually really an Aussie as well. And Hannah's books are very, they're dual timeline, they're just exquisite prose, and Vanessa's books remind me so much of Hannah's. So both of those on the Christmas gift list. Okay, Leanne Moriarty, watch out. Cassie Hamer, who's a darling friend of mine, she writes her first novel. I just was giggling my head off with the Mixmaster scene, which is called After the Party. You'll have to read that yourself to find out what happens with the KitchenAid. But this is all set in a neighbourhood, and the back cover says you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your neighbours. And Cassie writes books that are set in backyards and homes that we all know because they're our houses and our backyards. And she finds little threads of stories that she can weave through, and it's about people, but there's always a bit of sort of a mystical, not mystical, a mystery, a bit of a darker twist of something going on behind, and showing you that all is not as it appears from the outside. We all have that saying where, they have the perfect life, they have this, but no one really knows what's going on behind closed doors. So Go find Tough But Close. As I said earlier, Jane Harper's latest, The Survivors. The Dry, I say, which is her debut, has the best prologue ever written. The Lost Man has a twist that I just don't know how she manages to do it without giving anything away during the book. Shearwater, which that's another on my Christmas gift list because it's just beautiful. The hard thing with this one is finding people that don't have it already to give it to. As I said, Ray Cairns's The Good Mother, which is a beautiful debut. The most exquisitely packaged advanced reader copy I've ever received. It's set between Sydney and Northern Ireland, and it's just, I'm probably only about a quarter of the way through that. And this is not fiction. This is a book by Melanie Page. It's called Tale Spinning. And I was actually honoured to be asked to read this before it was published to give my thoughts. And I actually have been included on the back cover giving a little quote, which is very fangirl moment. It's a book on short story writing. Melanie is a high school teacher. And so it was basically more a guide for, her students as to how to write a short story. And I've done masterclass with Fiona McIntosh. I've done Vanessa Carnivale's retreats. I've done courses at Writing New South Wales. So I've done a lot of courses, but this is really, it's only a slim book. It's got quotes in there from Proust and so many, it's a really honest to goodness, basic, this is how you write and what you do, but just gives you a reminder of things. So that's newly released. So any aspiring authors out there, to me, it equally applies to long format as it does to short format. And I really could keep going and going and going, but we've got limited time. But just go buy a book, buy 3, support authors. They really have been struggling this year. You put so many hours and hours of work into it, and with people not being able to go to bookshops as easily. If you're on the Northern Beaches, you can still order online. So, I know you can't necessarily get to a physical bookshop, but try and support the industry because it has been hurting this year. I know everyone has, and I hope COVID just peters out next year and we can return to normal. But my goodness, we're so blessed in this country to be in the position that we are, and sending hugs to those overseas who aren't.
Yeah, we really are. And as much as I'm devastated by what's happening in the Northern Beaches at the moment, which, is affecting myself and quite a few of my author friends who live here as well, it's still, compared to what's going on overseas, only the tiniest drop. And we really, really are lucky. We've got some Christmas wishes coming through in the comments, so we might finish with a few of those, I think. So from Caroline, who I think has also been on every Friday Book Bites this year, wishing everyone a spectacular Christmas and, most importantly, a safe 2021. And also a Merry Christmas from Bev, who has been here, I think, nearly every week as well. Fantastic 21. Kay is saying we are very blessed to be living here in Australia, which I think we can all agree with. There is a thank you here from Jodie for you, Shell. She loves your enthusiasm, authors, books, and reading. And I should say this again, even though we call Shell the author stalker, it is done with absolute affection because her enthusiasm for authors and books and reading is so genuine. That's why we love you so much. A Merry Christmas from Claudine as well, another great supporter of Australian authors.
Claudine, listen to Talking Aussie Books over the holidays. I don't know how she does this interviewing business. I was so nervous today.
No one would ever know. And a thank you from Emma with a lovely Christmas. Joe, who has been here quite a lot on Friday Book Bites, Merry Christmas. Stay safe. Thank you for Friday Book Bites every week. And there is a question here from Caroline wanting to know if I'll be doing Friday Book Bites next year. I will be doing it. I don't know if it will be in the same format as this year. I will take a break over the next few weeks for Christmas, obviously, and then we'll see what 2021 brings us. It's been so much fun. I don't really want to stop. So we'll do that. Maybe not every week next year, but we'll see what happens as we go into 2021. And a Merry Christmas from Jodie. Thank you, Shell, for joining me for my very last episode. It was so lovely to have you here. And thank you, everyone. Whether it was your first time joining today or whether you've been with me for the last 28 episodes, I can't believe I've done 28 episodes. Thank you very much for joining me. And I'm so glad that a love of books can bring us all together in what has been a fairly separated world this year. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, stay safe, and we will see you in the new year.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Stay safe, have fun.
See you.